Can't you finally clean up your room? How often do I still have to tell you to brush your teeth before going to bed? Can't you finally do your homework now? I've told you 1,000 times you shall take off your shoes before going into the living room. This is what nagging sounds like. You may have heard it already in your childhood, but also nowadays you can hear this sound when angry mothers and fathers think they should admonish and correct their children in this way. What do you think of nagging? Can or should father and mother really raise their children in this way? That's what the following video from Good Parents is all about. Hello and welcome to Good Parents. My name is Wolfgang Kirschberg. I am a specialist in child and adolescent psychiatry and psychotherapy from Germany. From my many years of experience, I know that many parents find it very difficult to get their children to fulfill everyday requirements such as cleaning their room, brushing their teeth, or doing homework. They therefore often experience dealing with their child as an arduous struggle, a kind of vicious circle from which there is often no escape. On the other hand, they want to get along with their children without using those authoritarian parenting methods that many of them still experience in their own childhood. However, to their disappointment, they then find that this does not work as well as they had hoped. This disappointment is often expressed in nagging at their child and its behavior. But then the reference persons experience that nagging does not improve the relationship with the child, nor does it achieve the desired behavior. What is the reason for this, and how can parents deal with their children more successfully? That's what the following video from Good Parents is all about. First, I would like to address the question of what is typical for the sound of nagging. First, nagging is very often expressed in form of a question. The crucial point is, however, that this question cannot and shall not be answered. When the child is asked, "How often do I still have to tell you to clean up your room?" the reference person does not expect that the child answers the following way: "You still have to tell me exactly 357 times." If the child would react in this way, the reference person would consider it as disrespectful and outrageous. Rather, this question actually contains the criticism that in the past the child was asked very often to tidy its room without the child responding appropriately. So this is indeed a reproach that is not openly expressed but addressed to the child in the form of a question. Of course, an answer to this question is not expected, but most likely it is expected that the child will change its behavior and eventually do what is demanded. Unfortunately, often those who deal with the child find that this does not work. If someone wants to nag, this can also be expressed in the form of a command, e.g., "Now, finally do your homework." Here, too, the reference person expresses anger that the child has not yet met the requirements. However, this again happens in a covert way. The child therefore has no opportunity to comment on this. If the child replies, "No, I will not do it," this is likely to be perceived as defiant and disrespectful rather than appropriate. What all these forms of addressing the child have in common is that they formulate a kind of criticism of the child's behavior, but without expressing it in an explicit and factual form. So instead of saying, "I'm angry at you because you still haven't tidied your room, although we had agreed that you do so," this message is only conveyed to the child in a covert way, e.g. with the words, "Can't you finally?" or "How often must I still tell you?" But by nagging, the child is not directly criticized in a hurtful way, but the child is still conveyed a very negative relationship message. This means that nagging, in any case, sends a message to the child on the relational level, i.e. here the level of the relationship between reference person and child. On the other hand, the content level, that is the concern of the reference person, is neglected. It is therefore not surprising that nagging ultimately fails. The child who is exposed to nagging is not told what it should do differently. Rather, the child gets the feeling that it is bad or has done something bad, and that his reference person therefore is dissatisfied. It would be much easier for the child to understand the reference person, however, if the reference person, e.g., would say, We agreed this morning that you tidy up your room, and I want you to adhere to this agreement. In this way, the concern is formulated in a clear and understandable way on the content level without questioning the child as a person in any way. The child then also has the chance to react appropriately, e.g. by saying, I mean that I have already tidied my room well and that my room is fine now. It is not surprising that many children who are exposed to the sound of nagging of their reference persons switch to pull through, so to speak, which the reference persons then perceive as defiant or unreasonable behavior on the part of the child. But they didn't give the child a chance to really change its behavior. So the bottom line is that nagging does not help in raising children. If you really want to influence the behavior of your child and want to develop its behavior in such a way that you perceive it as appropriate, you have to address the child differently. But attention, please. Nagging is often an expression of tiredness or exhaustion of the child's reference persons. When a mother says to the child, I've already told you 1,000 times, then this also means I find it very exhausting to quarrel with you again and again, and at the moment I feel particularly tired. It is understandable if the sound of nagging is noticeable in such a situation. Each reference person should accept this, and this should also be accepted by the social environment of the reference person. So the point here is not to criticize parents' behavior. The point here is to make it clear that nagging is pointless in an educational sense. Anyone who nags should therefore have no illusions. Nagging does not change the child's behavior, and certainly not in the desired way. It has just been said that criticism of the child by nagging always takes place in a covert form. The reason for this is sometimes too that parents mean they should not criticize their child openly because children suffer too much from criticism or do not love their parents any longer if they are criticized. It can be said to this that children are quite capable to cope with open criticism of their behavior. No child suffers psychological harm if it is appropriately informed that from the perspective of the adult reference person it has failed to meet certain requirements. If the child has not complied with certain agreements, then this is usually clear to the child itself. Therefore, if the child's reference persons point this out, this is usually nothing new to the child. It is therefore much better for the child's psychological state of mind when it is sometimes criticized openly than if it is exposed to the nagging of its reference persons. But of course, open criticism too should never be the dominant way of communication with a child, because then the child gets the feeling that it can never meet the requirements of the reference persons. This finally means for the child that these don't like it. But how is it possible to influence the child's behavior in such a way that the desired goal is achieved? Well, this can partly be deduced from what has just been said. The child must be addressed primarily on the content and not on the relationship level. This means that the child must be told in a friendly and understandable way what is expected, whereby the expectations must be realistic and appropriate for the child. The classic counterexample in this regard is the request, clean up your room. This instruction is clearly given at the content level, but in such a way that it may present the child with an unsolvable task. This is especially the case when the child's room is in such a chaotic state that the child no longer knows where to start or to stop when it wants to tidy up the room. In this situation, it is better to tell the child in more detail what is expected by the reference person so that this can be done step by step, so to speak. A suitable formulation would be, e.g., first put your dirty laundry into the laundry basket in the bathroom. We will take care of everything else later. In this way, the child receives a clear and understandable instruction as to what is to do next. The second important point is that an appropriate behavior of the child is also appropriately reinforced, especially through praise. If the child finally has put its dirty laundry into the laundry basket, the mother can say, for example, "You did it very well. Your room already looks a lot nicer." In no case should the child's appropriate behavior be taken for granted and therefore not worthy of praise, even when it comes to everyday things like tidying up the room. Everyday requirements also want to be met first, and in this regard, it is very helpful for the child if this is also perceived and cherished by the reference persons. That's what I wanted to say today about nagging. I hope you liked it and it helped you. If this is the case, I would be glad if you can give me a like. For today I say goodbye. All the best. Until soon.